Is there any truth in Tom MacDonald's song Fake Woke? I'm Marco Perry. Welcome to the Perry Platform. Today's episode is set to be a little bit more fun. I'll be reviewing and commenting on a viral song called Fake Woke by Tom MacDonald. Now, I am a little bit late to the party. It's been around for some time, there's been many videos about it, but I thought I would chime in. Now, to set the stage, I'll try to play some clips of the song here and there. I won't be able to play the full song, obviously, because of copyright issues and whatnot. I'm trying to get by with the fair use claim. So I'll play some tidbits, and the other half of the time, I'll just be talking about what he tells you. And although I have heard the song before, I haven't truly analyzed the lyrics or dug that deep into it. I don't really have notes either. So we'll be going into it blind. Especially if you haven't heard the song before. Both of us will be trying to figure out what he's saying, if there's any truth to it, and why it's resonated so much with the general public. I believe it's sitting at around 10 million views, and for a song that critiques woke culture, the like to dislike ratio is pretty good. People enjoy it, and they feel like he's speaking some type of truth. So without further ado, let's begin. Here's how the song starts off.
I think it's crazy I'm the one who they labeled as controversial, and Cardi B is the role model for 12-year-old girls. There's rappers pushing Xanax at the top of the billboard, but if I mention race in a song, I'm scared I'll get killed for it.
So I'll just hop in here already. He started off pretty strong. To have a world or a society where someone like Cardi B has become a role model for 12-year-old girls and young people in general, and people aren't raising flags about that, that's worrisome. Because Cardi B is no authority on things like politics, on how to conduct yourself. I would not say that it's correct to have young people look up to someone like that. And he's detected this form of hypocrisy where certain types of people who would claim to be woke, they would say things like they're looking out for the best interest and compassion and setting good examples and whatnot. Then you look at the people they've actually put in places to influence the youth. And you have people like Cardi B, and that's only the tip of the iceberg. Then you look at the rest of the popular models and people who are trending on the top of the music billboards and whatnot, and they're talking about things like he mentioned, such as pushing Xanax and drugs and all these things that young people are being exposed to, thinking that it's cool. But if you want to talk about something legitimate, you have a question about something that the woke school has deemed untalkable anymore, things that cannot be spoken about, well, you're probably going to be canceled for that. He uses get killed for it, and maybe that's a little bit extreme, but the sentiment there, for sure, I think it's spot on. Then he goes on to say that this is backwards. It's getting exponentially dumb and 100% there. I felt that myself. Over the past few years, it feels like popular culture and just the way politics are getting is in fact becoming exponentially dumb, and it gets dumber every day. People are realizing that, but it's not clear what you do to stop it. It can very easily feel like the average person is at the mercy of the individuals who are steering the cultural ship now, and it does seem like that power has fallen to the woke individual. Society is moving towards that very quickly, and we might already have arrived at the destination, but we still have our foot completely on the gas, going faster and faster and reaching that exponential idiocy that's hinted at here. I do agree with that. Then he actually brings up a funny comparison with Eminem. So I'm not too sure if you guys have heard his older tracks, but he was really quite the violent person. He talked about things like murdering family members, things like murdering his wife, drugs, like everything that was bad. Now, I'm not trying to hate on his music. I do think it was actually quite good, but the messages there were not. From a role model standpoint, it was quite horrendous. He did talk about some very bad things, but you have someone like that. Eminem, he was homophobic and doing all these things, and now he's become somewhat woke. He's come forward and said things like, if you voted Republican, he doesn't want you to listen to his music. And that's coming from the guy who talked about murdering women and stuff like that. It's crazy how the times have shifted. Maybe, of course, he may have changed his mind. He's adopted a new perspective, but it is ironic. Coming from Eminem, the counterculture king, the shock value person. And now he draws a line at being conservative. Now, one last part I'll talk about before we get back into the song. He goes on to then say that people are ashamed to be American, and they should love that though, because they have the right to say it. And there's a certain freedom there and not get strung up in public. I feel like that's lost on a lot of people too. There are individuals who say Western culture is so bad, it's this and that, but look around the world. For you to even be able to critique the government at that level is something of a massive privilege. Many other places you'll be publicly executed for critiquing governments and what they stand for. Look at Iran, for example. They would have no problem with that. Or China. Even in India right now, people are protesting against the government and they're being trampled out. Or Myanmar. Or any other plethora of places to select from. This type of privilege is real and is lost on many woke people because they're focused on other types of privilege, just not the ones that they indulge in.
We're taught how to walk and talk, but the system wants adults to sit down and shut up. Cancel culture runs the world now, the planet went crazy. Label everything we say as homophobic or racist. If you're white, then you're privileged, guilty by association. All our childhood heroes got me too'd or they're rapists. They never freed the slaves. They realized that they don't need to change. They gave us tiny screens, we think we free cause we can't see the cage. They knew that race war would be the game they need to play. For people to big teams, they use the media to feed the flame. They so fake woke. Facts don't care about feelings. They know they won't tell me what to believe in. They so fake.
Okay, so there he's getting into the identity politics, the tribalism, and the groupthink that has captured much of the Western world. I'm not sure I would use the exact same words that he has here. He has identified some issues, but perhaps the phrasing would not be in line exactly what I would say. But he has touched at the essence of something. And you do hear in the chorus something very familiar. He says that facts don't care about your feelings. That's a Ben Shapiro line. That's where he got it from. Now, there is truth to that, and there is something to caveat it as well. So, of course, facts do not care about your feelings. To say something is wrong or should not be said simply because it hurts your feelings is not a good enough excuse. But I will say, that's not a reason or an excuse in and of itself to go out of your way to hurt someone's feelings. Now, with great power comes great responsibility. We're talking about things in the academic world here. Things that influence how people see the world, reality, truth, and how much respect they can have for you as an institution. Truth and facts have to be your top priority. You cannot be politicized. You cannot allow that to influence what you have going on. Whether you're the government, or a public official, or a health unit, whatever. Facts do not care about your feelings, and you cannot turn and try to rearrange the facts simply because individuals don't like them. But at a personal level though, not in the academic realm, there is no reason to go out of your way to say certain facts to hurt people's feelings. If someone doesn't look good on a certain day, although it may be true, it's not a good thing to go out of your way to tell someone that. It's needless and it's cruel. That's the distinction here. Personal and professional. Academic and you simply talking to people on the street. You have to have civility at the same time you have to regard truth. It's not that complicated. You can walk and chew gum at the same time, but today we seem to have lost that as well. Now, after the chorus, he moves on to his second verse, and he starts off by saying, I think it's crazy that all of these people here are screaming facts, but they're fake woke. They hate their neighbors because essentially they disagree with them, and we'll linger on that for a second. It's not just simply that they're screaming facts where they're deluded and they're talking nonsense. It's a certain level of sanctimony being presented too. The woke culture comes with an air of moral superiority. And even further than that, one of their core tenets are stated items such as compassion and acceptance and whatnot. But here there is also another contradiction. That's only if you are part of the group. If you are a different thinker or someone who does not abide by the woke ideology, well, you cannot expect to be receiving any of that compassion. In fact, you get the opposite. You get fury. There'll be attempts to cancel you, attempts to do this and this and that. And that's not conductive because, as he says here, the key word is actually neighbor. You're all citizens of the same country, whether it's America or Canada. You don't have much of a future if you hate half of your population. Things will get to a boiling point, and what erupts from that, only God can tell. You can look at history for examples of how bad things can get, and we're certainly on a path towards that with how high tensions are and just how intense the polarization in many Western countries has become. It's not conductive, and I do put a lot of that blame on woke culture and the social media that enabled it to manifest. Then he goes on to talk about something surrounding censorship. It's an issue because the individuals who are putting forth these censorship practices are the ones choosing what they can erase. There isn't an agreed upon standard, and once again, it's very political. And he hits us with a powerful line here. There is a difference between hate speech and speech you hate. Crazy, right? Very simple, but something that people have forgotten. What is hate speech? And I've talked about this before at length. It's hard to define what it is. Of course, there is hateful speech. No one is denying that. It does exist. But what I'm talking about is codifying it. How do you codify it? How do you put it into law? How do you create a guideline around that? These days, you can have someone very simply say that they believe in biology and they believe that there are two genders, fundamentally, male and female, but certain individuals will call that hate speech. And is it really? If the person's intent was nothing to do with hate, but simply stating facts and talking from a scientific perspective, where do you get off labeling it hate speech? But that's where we are. And I do think that if someone were simply to do that, as I've laid out, talk about the biological differences between men and women, there are a lot of woke people who would have no problem calling it hate speech and trying to shut it down and get it canceled. Very intolerant, I might point out, but that's where we are. It's speech that they hate, and they're confusing that with hate speech, and it's a very powerful distinction that has to be hammered in, has to be talked about more, but it's even hard to do that because saying that itself can even get you canceled. Even talking about the differences between hate speech and speech you hate, it's not really commonplace these days. It's a shame, but we've strayed very far from liberal values of free speech acceptance and free debate and whatnot. They've eroded. And it does seem like we're heading towards an authoritarian realm under the guise of liberalism. And that's a true shame. It's deceitful, and something has to happen there.
Day with food in my family, without being accused of celebrating native casualties. We got so divided, it's black and white and political. Republicans are bigots, libtards if you're liberal. There's riots in our streets and it's just getting worse. Y'all screaming deep on the police, y'all are genius for sure. They're underfunded already, they're way too busy to work. Order food and call the cops, see what reaches you first.
So here he's talking again about polarization, how things have been divided right down the middle. If you are a Republican or conservative, the left will likely view you as a bigot. And if you're on the left, well, the conservatives and people on the right will view you as some type of fool. That's not healthy, and it's contrary to what I believe is the path forward. A proper respect for both sides of the equation and what they contribute to society. The liberal types, I do believe, are very good at creating new solutions and stuff like that. The conservative types, though, are good at making sure things are in the right place, making sure that we're not rushing too fast with something. It's almost like one's the gas pedal and one's the brake. You can't just be fully putting things on the gas because the proper foresight and thinking, it's not there. And there are things you sacrifice with culture and heritage and traditions of the past. Not all of it is good, but some of it is. And people on the left, it seems like, especially today, are not quick to acknowledge that. Then you have the conservatives, which are very slow moving, but there is benefits to that as well, as we talked about, such as preserving things that have to be preserved. Now, I wouldn't want the conservatives and the right-wingers to be organizing our efforts against climate change. Definitely not. But I wouldn't want the liberals being solely in charge of it either. The balance is a beautiful thing, and there are strengths and deficits that each party has. Utilizing them both to their fullest potential gets us to a great place, and that's truly what diversity is our strength means. Ideological diversity. When you have a group of people in power who all think the same, that's not diverse, and that's not going to help you because certain flaws in your thinking will not be exposed to you. You won't even get to see a different picture from the other side. It'll just be groupthink and a bunch of fallacies there. But, of course, once again, a once great saying, diversity is our strength, has been tarnished here. People are actively fighting against that. They want to label the other side of the equation as either fools or bigots and whatnot, and it's not healthy. It's a disaster. He then moves on to talk about the very popular call to either defund / abolish the police that was coming from the woke scold during the summer last year. Now, anyone with any sense knew that that was just a ridiculous proposal. As he's pointed out, the police are underfunded as it is. Now, we talk about why. Maybe because we have them doing too many things. Maybe things like the mental health services can be removed from their plate. And if you do that, maybe then the funding is adequate. But certain changes that I vouch for myself, like equipping every cop with a dash cam that cannot be turned off, that's instantly uploaded to the cloud, so people can see exactly what's going on at all times, and having an independent body who reviews these things, that's not free. And in Canada, something like the RCMP, for example, they do many things, not simply just policing people for petty crimes like drugs and whatnot. I'm actually in favor of legalizing all drugs. I do think that's a good way to go. It's a waste of time having our law enforcement enforce that. And there are many crazy encounters that happen because of a law that shouldn't even exist, in my opinion. Now, the RCMP, as we're talking about, they do a variety of things. And to talk about defunding them as a police unit, the consequences of that are not certain. Certain people think it'll be a net positive and there's no debate, but if you dig deeper into it, many services in certain realms of law and order, they could suffer. Now, he did make the funny point at the end, saying, order food and call the cops. See what reaches you first. I do think in certain areas that's more applicable than others. If you live in a very busy city, of course, the police are well funded there and they'll get to you fast. But in certain other places, maybe more rural communities or underfunded individual places, yeah, I can definitely see Uber Eats getting to you faster, especially if you order from like McDonald's, getting to you faster than the police. And that's crazy. You can order a burger, it'll get to you in 10 minutes, but to get the cops to arrive at a destination where a crime is unfolding, it might take way longer than that. That's not solved by slashing budgets and whatnot. Now, I am open to defunding certain things, as we just talked about. It's not a black or white issue for me either. Something going as far as abolishing them, though, that was pure foolishness, and I'm glad they dropped that. You know, at the beginning, the bar was not set at defund. Many of the woke individuals that we see running around were talking about abolish, and that's just pure foolishness. Defund, I don't think it's that smart either, but there are arguments to be had there, and I'm open to that. So at least they were able to be pulled back to reality a little bit in that regard, and it does give me hope. Maybe certain other stances that we're seeing that the average person would find radical, they can be pulled back to the center, and that's where I do think the path forward is, in the center. Being a centrist, not having an ideological allegiance to the left or the right, but simply liking good ideas for where they come from.
Censoring the facts turns our children into idiots. They claim it's for our safety. I'll tell you what it really is. Removing information that empowers all the citizens. The truth doesn't damage points of view that are legitimate. They're trying to change amen to amen and women. How'd we let them make praying a microaggression? Instead of asking God for the strength to keep winning, we cheat to get ahead and then we ask him for forgiveness.
So I think that's the last clip we'll play from the song. I think we played a good amount. I do encourage you, though, to check it out, the full version on YouTube. Here in this last part that we'll talk about, he has another great one-liner. The truth doesn't hurt points of views that are legitimate. It's very powerful once again, and something that we've strayed far away from as a society. Since when did certain things have to be censored because individuals fear how the public will interpret it? If it's true, then it's not going to damage a legitimate point of view. If it's a nonsensical claim, then it might support nonsensical point of views, but those can be conquered easily in free debates, which once again we've done away with. So is it any surprise that people are becoming more foolish when we're very eager now to censor certain facts and studies and findings that will be deemed aggressions or deemed insensitive and whatnot? People will just understand simply the agenda that's being put forward and not the big picture. It seems to be almost like a mistrust in the average person. And I can't agree with that. To hide certain facts and truth and debates from people because maybe they can't handle it. Maybe it will corrupt their mind. Maybe it's better for everyone just to remain in their shell. And I don't buy that. I believe in the power of the individual to understand what's going on, interpret the world and the facts before them for themselves. And if they stray and they come to a weird spot, what's the answer to that? Well, it's free debate and talking about it. If someone comes to me with a bad idea, we'll figure it out. I'll tell them why I think the opposite, why they should as well, and maybe we get to convert them. Maybe we get to turn them and change their mind. Now, if you take the opposite approach, though, if someone comes to you with a bad idea and either you censor them, you shut them down, or you try to fight them, are they going to change their mind? Probably not. Now, they might appear like they have because they don't want to bother with you, but deep down, you've changed nothing. You may have actually ingrained those negative thoughts and ideas deeper. Conspiracies are very powerful these days because of that, because nobody wants to really talk about it and enable that free speech to shatter them. When you try to censor things, they get stronger because people are going to feel like they actually are onto something even though they're not. When you don't want to give the time of day to the anti-maskers and you just call them fools, which I can see why, it's still not productive though, because they're going to think that you're just a sheep because you haven't put forward a proper argument to change their mind. When you reveal someone to the truth, it's a better step forward because now they might see something that makes them think they're actually mistaken. If you reveal them to just anger and wrath and hatred, they're not going to be able to change their mind from that. Now, I will say I do think it was a very interesting song. I don't agree with everything he said here. I don't think he's phrased things perfectly, but I do think he has hit at a core issue that many societies around the world are dealing with right now. His phrasing, his examples, I understand it's a song, so he had to consider things like rhyming and quick hitters and stuff like that. It's not an essay. It's not a debate. He wasn't able to expand on all the points he's talked about. It's more of an introduction, and if you view it in that regard, it's decent. It's not perfect, but it is catchy, and it does come with a powerful message, and my hope fundamentally is that it gets a conversation started. You never see songs like this because they're not accepted in the mainstream, but for some reason, somehow, this one broke through the mold, and it's very popular, and it may be exposing people to certain ideas and themes that they never considered before, because they were either taboo or wasn't woke enough to talk about, whatever. And he did have some good one-liners and quotes in there that may be able to change certain minds and get conversations going. Now, I do fear a pendulum swing, though. The woke school is powering their own form of extremism, and if you swing it to the other side, on the right wing, there's extremism there too. White nationalism, all these other problematic matters. And it just solidifies the fact that I think we have to be in the middle. Either extreme is a dangerous place to be, and powering one or the other is not going to help. You can choose one side, but support for one side is going to give the other side a certain impetus to get stronger as well. To shut them both down is how we move forward here. Being woke is it's sad to say, a detrimental thing these days, it seems. The ideology there is just not productive, and it is fueling many of the issues that we deal with on a social level today. If you've been paying attention to the way things have been developing in the Western world, there is cause for alarm, but not all hope is lost, and I do think it is something like a vocal minority who is powering that movement. And when I saw this video, and all the views it had, and all the likes it had, versus the dislikes, it did give me a certain perspective on the matter. Far more people were resonating with the message versus ones who weren't. And it doesn't mean that you agree with everything in the song, but the general theme that there is a problem with the woke culture that we're seeing today, that was accepted by many people based on this ratio. And the woke defenders were in the minority there, and they were actually being drowned out by the individuals who were there saying there's a valid discussion to be had here. And that is impressive, and I do think that's, once again, something that we have to do. To combat bad ideas, you always have to talk about them, and freely and openly. And here, there's a call to action to freely talk about and bring to the air the issues with woke culture. Now, I do not condone any type of harassment, bullying, fighting. Don't stoop to their level. Canceling, do not do that. Simply seek to educate and put forward a good example. That's how we move forward together. Now, that does bring us to the end of our conversation for today. I did enjoy the song. I'll echo once again for people, so I'm not getting any crazy comments. I don't agree with everything he said here, but he did have a general point. The culture with wokeism. Now, if you enjoyed the content, be sure to leave a review and share. That'll help us grow. And you can find me online at perryplatform.org and on social media at perryplatform. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you soon.